But here within the United States, there are some particular issues around getting testing in a timely fashion, and how that might potentially impact the efficacy of contact tracing. Infected people can transmit the virus for days before they develop symptoms. And so they may not even have the inclination to go and get tested, assuming testing is available, which as of now, it is starting to become more available here in the United States on a widespread basis, although it took some time. And by the time you get a data about a positive test, then you still have to go back in time to be able to trace who you came in contact with and be able to notify those people that they should self-isolate and seek testing as well. So the timing of that testing is critical, and the availability of the test is critical for the efficacy of contact tracing. Some cohesive response at the federal level that coordinates between all of the states, and all 50 states within the United States have been somewhat doing their own thing, as opposed to some other countries around the world that have had a more unified response. Precision and accuracy is another question in terms of how precise can you determine through a contact tracing application how close someone was to another person. There are a number of countries around the world that have been using GPS technology, but GPS technology to determine whether or not you've been within 6 feet of someone, it's not exactly the most effective. GPS is very good at telling within, I'd say, a block radius within major metropolitan centers, but not much more accurate than that. Bluetooth is becoming the more standard technology to be used, where if a Bluetooth signal from one device meets another Bluetooth signal of another device, it's called the Bluetooth handshake, and the signal strength determines essentially the distance. Although there are issues with that as well. If 2 people are sitting 2 feet apart from each other at a table, and they have their phones in their pocket, the Bluetooth handshake is going to be much weaker than if they have their phones out on the table, for example. And so how do you get a signal strength? What do you determine the strength of the signal in order to be able to notify people through contact tracing? Here in the US, authority is another issue. There's no federal mandate that individuals need to have contact tracing apps. Some states are trying to mandate some type of contact tracing through GPS trackers, although I believe that number is going to be growing, but the authority is just not there as it is in some more authoritarian countries. Adoption, the United States, in terms of a cultural difference, for a lot of the world is individuals are much less willing to do what the government says. Again, if you're paying attention to US media, you will see that it's hard enough to get people to wear face masks in public places, in some places, that getting them to download an application that transmits their data to government agencies is going to be a bit of a challenge. And there are studies from epidemiologists out of Oxford that say the average transmission is, for someone who has SARS-CoV is to 3 people, at least at the start of the pandemic. We need to get that under 1 in order to get the virus under control. And in order to get that, you need 56% of the population actually on board with contact tracing. So that is going to be a significant challenge. We talked about efficacy a lot. It's a question of how to get the technology to actually work. And Apple and Google have come out with software within their operating systems that enable the anonymization of Bluetooth handshakes, although they are kicking that software and that technology over to other developers and government agencies, and not really taking on the responsibility of doing and completing the contact tracing themselves. And so we need to make sure we have a method that is actually effective, which of course implicates privacy.